Good afternoon, great people of light. I hope all is well, just as it is here. Today, I would like to get into the conversation about this debate Nancy Pelosi got into on populism and I would like to explain in detail exactly what she is meaning. A lot of people are not aware of what's really going on. They just think it's business as usual. And this is a detrimental period of time. This is an open portal of change that if you're willing to walk into it, hold on a second. If and only if you want to walk into this open wide portal of change and want to see real change, not an establishment facade or fake imagery of a change through symbolism. But this is real change. Let me see something. What is up with my... Oh, I can't touch that yet. So, real change that it's about ready to approach. This is why it's important to be spiritually in tuned, to understand that not everything is about our uh, our physical representation, but it's more, it's much more. You see, Trump was never a politician. Trump was a billionaire who decided to take his accomplishments to another level and become a president, much like Ronald Reagan. He was in the acting business. A great actor was Ronald Reagan in the westerns, and he rolled over into politics, into becoming a president, into becoming, well, not necessarily. I wouldn't say. Well, yeah, they call it politics, right? So this was what he chose to do. But I feel like it's much more, being that Trump was never an actor, but he was in Hollywood. This is much more for Trump. This is about saving America as he grew up in, that he knew, that he knows. It's not about racism, because Trump is not doing it just for white people. Because if he was doing it just for white people wouldn't be after his ass. Let me explain it to you. He's a threat, but we need a white man to be a threat to the establishment. We can't have someone that looks like us. We're naturally a threat. We're already a threat. They're going to kneecap you before you even get started. much like they're trying to do with Trump, but they're not going to be successful at it. Trump can play. You need someone on the same level. You need to push that out there. You can't really go in there. Like we got Bonnie, we got Letitia James, we got um the other black DAs going after Trump when they should not be taking part in this fight spiritually. Spiritually, they should not be in the places that they are holding, but they were strategically put there and they don't even understand it themselves. They're much like many of these other people. They're much like majority of our people out in society that are about to cast their votes, but they're going to cast their votes for Biden because they totally don't understand, and they brought into the brainwashing that is currently going on, and that brainwashing is going to be stronger than ever, and it's going to be put upon what's going to be put upon the pedestal is our race, because it's always been used by the Democrats, and it always will be used to our detriment. It's going to be always deadly to us, unbeknownst to us. And so some people fear, they put that emotion of fear into our people because it's quite easily to control us. They know this, but yet they won't pay us reparations. So they won't give us our own country. They won't give us our own land because we are that threat. And they got to hold us down by feeding us into fear. The same fear they did on the plantation on those times in the olden days. So we have not come from, half of us have not come, a certain percentage of our people have not come from underneath of that. That's why for 60, for decades now, people been voting 60 years Democrats, and that got nowhere great for us as a people. It's time to hop into that portal of change. If we don't do it now, if our people don't do it now, it's over with for us. And we allowed ourselves to be fooled once again. Now I understand. Now I see how a people could fall into slavery by another people. It's always been a con job, and we've always fell for it. I talked about they don't do adults because adults know. So they would have to kill off your adult population that already knows how the norm is and feed it to children, babes that don't know, don't have a clue. This is what happened to our ancestors. So they were able to perpetuate what was comfortable and what was safe. And that was to go along with the establishment and not against it. Never against it. The only way we were able to go against it was the agenda that was set forward by these Caucasians that, like Nancy Pelosi, which we would call in our community good old white folks. Here's why many people in my community do not think that there's a such thing as good old white folks, because we understand people like Pelosi, and we understand the whole thing with the Jews. We understand that the Jews were behind certain movements for the purpose of an agenda, much like the Dems, much like the Dems make like they are for my community, but they only harm my community year after year after year. And we fall for it because a tradition, stuck in tradition of traditionally voting Democrats. Now more than ever, it is deadly to us because it's going to either be over with, no hope for our community, or there's going to be hope for our community because we broke out of the old ways of thinking and the bondage that they put us in mentally of controlling us emotionally. So I think it's important that we do our due diligence, come out of from listening to CNN, MSNBC, and all these other liars, and listen to our hearts, listen to our souls, listen to ourselves by studying, by weighing in, by measuring the two opponents against each other and seeing which one would be the better, not allow someone else to tell you what it is. Now, when it comes to religion, we let them tell us what it is. They tell you that you didn't have no existence, basically. If you want to take it back to the old times of them preaching the Bible, you didn't exist. Um, it was all Caucasians. God was Caucasian. You are to listen to the godly like people of light because they are bright and they are white and they are light. I'm saying this to give you the mental picture of the programming that can possibly happen from this way of thought thinking that you know put and impounded upon a people. Then things slowly try to start to change to appease you a little bit, but to keep you engaged in that particular religion. It's called a form of control. As long as your mind is thinking great thoughts, it's a safe space, and you would always do what they bid you to do, what they need you to do, instead of going against the grain and and learning for yourself to open up your mind wider to uh, to come against these things. But people are people are waking up to come against these things, and it's been happening for a long, long time now. Uh, it's happened for decades and decades now. Um, Now people are woke. People are aware of these things. I'm not talking about the wakeness that the Dems talk about, but I'm talking about being aware of the truth of everything that's natural and of us as a people on this planet, period. What is conducive for each being on the planet, which is the truth, the light, the real light, not that degenerate light of am I female or am I male? Um, that's a degeneracy. That's a sickness. That's a mind that cannot conceive anything above the physical. So let's get into, now that I've explained how our people are controlled in the mental state, mentally, to fall for the tricks and trades and perpetuate what they want you to continue with and allow them to continue with. Let's get into exactly what she wants to continue with, which is a threat to you and me, but we don't, people don't know that it's a threat because they think she's selling it. She's got a pretty package, but the product is rotten. It's poisoning. It's no good. So you got a pretty package coming to your house. It's placed there. You see it, you expecting this great thing, and it's just not good at all. Hold on. So I'm back. I don't have a lot of time, but these interruptions is just slowing me down. Let's get back to it. So it's deadly what they want to perpetuate. And what they want to perpetuate is what I've been talking about, what I've been angry about, what I do not want to perpetuate, what I do not want to see. I would love to see greatness in the world. I would like to see countries be free from, and another thing about the money. I would, the only reason why I would love the money to fall is because I talk about Benjamin Franklin. We need to get back to gold standard. That is more important than the American dollar. The American dollar always been a form of control. Nobody should be controlling any other country. If you feel like, as a woman of light, my perspective is I do not think we should be controlling or we should feel threatened by any other country. I think all countries can come upon make their own decisions on what they want for their people. These countries, let truth be told, are the countries of our ancestors, of the American people's ancestors. These countries held many, many ideologies that were way better than the ideologies we have today. Many countries would be able to take care of their people if they didn't have puppets placed strategically within their countries and war tearing them apart constantly by manipulated people. This is one of the things Nancy Pelosi would love to perpetuate and persist on, and that's the control of the countries. That is a threat to democracy because the certain segments, a small segment of people live and they breathe off of the torture and the struggles and the pains and the agonies of other countries and us Americans as well. This has to change. This has to change. But I'm going to let Nancy Pelosi tell you in her own words the threat to democracy, and then I'm going to try to explain what I previously just said and how that coincides with what she just said. Let's listen to it.
Here's the thing that is so sad about all of this. These people who are populist and go out there and make all these claims take advantage of people who have legitimate economic concerns.
I now look to the Speaker Emerita, Nancy Pelosi, to close the case for the proposition.
Good evening. Thank you all very much for this very stimulating evening. Mr. President, congratulations to you and your officers for bringing us together to discuss this very important challenge. The proposition says that it is a threat to democracy. It didn't say it will cause it. It said it is a threat. So remember what the proposition is. Now listen attentively to our two friends here in their description of populism and our white tie and tail gentleman and his comments. And you know what? They make a very compelling argument. It would have been so appropriate 200 years ago in the time of Andrew Jackson. It's an old notion of populism. For today, I always like to put down temporal markers. For today, how populism weighs in is in a way that is different. Voltaire said, if you want to debate with me, define your terms. Well, let's define what is happening with populism today. Populism is sprung on some of the people that have been named here, put forth with an ethno-nationalist populism. In our country, we see nationalism, isolationism. We had a fight to get the bill that we got last week, and generated by an ethnic negativity about immigrants, immigrants, people who are different from them, these people, and the rest. Our problem with, I don't think mob rule is a definition of democracy. What is democracy? Let's define democracy. Democracy is the rule of law. Democracy is free and fair elections. Democracy is about the independent judiciary. It's about freedom of the press, to have transparency and to have accountability of elected officials to the people. It's about all of that. And that is everything that the populist regime in Washington, D.C. is against. Populism is about fighting the ethno-nationalistic populism, as is the threat to democracy, is about threatening what they call elites, a free press. No thanks. Free press. It's about fighting issues that relate to free and fair elections, where we have voter suppression to the nth degree under this regime, and a resistance to passing the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Act, all of that, because they want to contain who votes. Now, the issue of independent judiciary. We owe so much to the UK, or England as it was, when it put forth so many things at Runnymede, England. And one of them was trial by jury. When King John came, the barons who were there they had 12 chairs. And what sprang from that was a jury of your peers, 12 peers. And that sprang from the Magna Carta, and something that we hold dear in our country. Right now, we see trial by jury threatened by vicious assaults on the jurors. So when we talk about populism and we talk about democracy, Let's understand our terms today, not 200 years ago, but today. And if you are humored by some of the, named Ted Cruz and people like that, that may be humorous to you, but it ain't funny to us because it has a direct impact on what's happening. Now, here's the thing that is so sad about all of this. These people who are populist and go out there and make all these claims take advantage of people who have legitimate economic concerns. In this day and age, people are concerned, and some of you have heard me say this before, are concerned about innovation. How are they and their families going to thrive and survive economically in a new era of innovation? They're concerned about globalization. They're concerned about immigration. They're concerned about anything new because it's not familiar to them. And so along comes a snake oil salesman, sells them a bill of goods, and then takes office, and the only legislation put forth is a bill that gives a tax bill that gives 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, that has legislation to take away their health care. If that isn't enough for you, when we didn't have the bill to go give aid to Ukraine and the rest, the speaker said to me, I can't do it until I do the budget bill. What was holding up the budget bill? After giving a $2 trillion tax cut to the wealthiest 1% in our country, $2 trillion added to the national debt, unpaid for. The big issue that held us up at the end was something called WIC, food for women, infants, and children, for new families. We can't afford to give that food. It's going to add to the national debt. That's what these purveyors of populism sold a bill of goods to these people who grasped it because they had legitimate concerns that have to be respected and they have to be addressed. But the fact is that democracy can, since your 200-year-ago version about Andrew Jackson and all that, so much has happened that our distinguished person, I don't know your name, but thank you for your pro-argument. We've seen demagogues come down the pike, destroy the press. What do the Republicans say? Fake news. So they're diminishing that in the eyes of these poor souls who are looking for some answers. We've given them to them, but they're blocked by some of their views on guns. They have the 3 Gs, guns, gays, God, that would be a woman's right to choose. And the cultural issues cloud some of their reception of an argument that really is in their interest. I don't agree with you.
Woman is a part of God. Woman is God. Man is God. We make the decisions because we are God, living in the physical, having a physical experience. So we make our decisions. We have foresight and we have hindsight. Foresight, we must utilize to make their decisions, the right decisions moving forward.
That people, we don't accuse people of not knowing what they're doing. They know what their personal interest is. We respect that. But the fact is that using whether it's people different from me, nationalism, populism, is a very dangerous threat to democracy, not just in America where we're seeing it play out, but in the whole world. In the context of a fight between democracy and autocracy, not mine, but the version of populism, ethno-nationalist populism, which tries to bring down education and fake news, the media, which is a protector of democracy, that version is contributing in countries other than our country and is a danger to democracy. We think democracy is on the ballot in America. It's about a victory that we must win, because it will only make matters worse if they have another stay at what they're doing to the courts in our country, the fear that they're instilling in jurists in our country, the suppression of the vote in our country, the role of their big, dark, rich billionaire donors who don't want to pay taxes, suffocating the airways from the fossil fuel industry and the gun industry and the rest of that. So money and populism, sadly, have gone together with this ethno-nationalist, what they call elite, which we call education, free press, and the rest.
Nobody wants to be poor all their lives. Nobody wants to be living in poverty all their lives. So eventually, through your achievements, through your goals, through your hard work, you can become that billionaire. That's the goal of many people, is to become wealthy. But when you get to that level, this is what you're going to have to be faced with after you've struggled and worked hard.
So I urge you to think in terms of the word. It says it's a threat. You're going to deny that it's a threat to democracy in the versions that have emerged in America so clearly? And why does everybody here say to me, what happens if he gets elected? Well, you can't let that happen, because for us, this election is Washington crossing the Delaware. This is about a democratic, no offense to the Brits, but the fact is also that what happened here at Runnymede, the Magna Carta, yes, the first parliament and the rest of that, has a great contribution to democracy in the world, but our country was founded on the principle that all people are created equal. A constitution that tried to implement that wasn't perfect from the beginning, but they were able to amend it to end slavery and all the other remnants.
And all people are created equal in this country, equally taken advantage of through their policies that they want to perpetuate and persist on.
Of what came before. But populism, in the version of Andrew Jackson, which was described here, is not the threat that we are talking about. That's part of it. But the fact that's so sad is a misrepresentation of people who exploit the populist attitude of, I want to have my say, and then use it to get elected and then hurt those people the most. Hurt those people the most with it, as I say, unfair taxation, unfair distribution of resources. A budget should be a statement of our national values. Instead, it's a vehicle to put more money in the pockets of his contributors. And on top of all of that, taking away health care and the rest by lying about it all. That's about deaths, this and abortion. It's not about any of that. So if there could be truth in their message, I think that people would react differently, because they would know quite clearly how it affects them and their lives, where they know better than anybody their kitchen table concerns on how they can pay the bills, educate their children, save for retirement, pay the rent, and the rest of that. So my friends, this is interesting academically, intellectually, and the rest. But on the ground, populism, as the version that we see now, is a threat to democracy.
And the threat is you overcoming and not becoming that small person that she is talking about. Our condition, our being maintaining that condition that keeps her in the position of control and perpetuating on and on, people being in that same condition that you lifted yourself from. So a cycle. They would like to keep a cycle, the cycle going in America, but also perpetuating the same thing in other countries. And if other countries do not abide by, then they're either killed or war is imminent. It's it's is put forward in these countries intentionally.
Really hard to deny. I was eager to hear their arguments, but what I heard could have been made 200 years ago and not facing the realities that we see. So I urge you all to vote in favor of the proposition. And again, with respect for the presentations that we had, and really, Sultan, I was ready to vote for you for one of those positions. I really was. But I'm not sure now because I don't know that you could possibly believe the presentation. I know this is academic, so maybe you believe it. I respect that. But what I do respect is our democracy. And just tell you one more thing. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, where our national anthem was written by Francis Scott Key. And he wrote a beautiful thing in the national anthem, and it's our motivation right now in some of our campaigning. He said, proof through the night that our flag was still there. Proof through the night that our flag was still there. We have to prove through the night of this election that our flag is still there. A flag that we pledge to every civic day with liberty and justice for all. And that is supporting democracy, supporting our.
Well, they basically went against ensuring that our flag is still there, only to incite all these fears of a boogeyman, a war boogeyman that's going to come and destroy us. I don't think like that. I don't think that Putin is planning on destroying us. I don't think China is planning on destroying us. They wouldn't just plan on destroying us if we weren't putting our hands in their affairs. And I don't think they're even planning on destroying us because of that. Um, what I do know is that we are self-destructive. Um, they've allowed so many people into this country illegally. They allowed them illegally to just come in, steal their way into this country. Nancy Pelosi is a hypocrite because you can't ensure that the flag is still there, and you're allowing you you don't know who you allowed in to be a threat to the country, who wants to be a threat to the country. And I'm not saying that other countries are a threat to us, but sometimes you can allow those who may not stand for what we stand for here in the country, who don't even stand for what their own country stand for, that don't stand for what any place stands for. And they can come and do the same thing they did to their country: rob, steal, and kill. And you won't have an American flag. So what Nancy Pelosi is talking about makes no sense at all. It's like, vote for us so we can keep this, what we call democracy, what we consider democracy is control over countries and control over the American people. Instead of being in office doing what we're supposed to do, we're influencing minds. We're influencing people to think the way we want them to think. And we're using our power through the news, manipulating the news, making the news say what they want it to say. But yet, everything else is a threat. Anything that goes against their agenda will be a threat. And Trump goes against their agenda. And they need to be totally away from the White House because they do not represent what the people want. So, with that said, always remember true love, real peace, and the higher self within the soul. Till next time, peace. And thank you for being here.